Okay, it says we are live. I like your thumbnail face at the beginning there. Hi,
Nice.
everybody. Thanks, people, for coming. As a reminder, we can't always see everyone who's here, nor can we see everyone's comments in the chat. But if you are here, let us know in the chat. Drop us a comment, say hello. If you have any questions, I know this is a unique one. So today, normally I do coffee chats and we just talk about getting into data. But Luke is the founder of a consulting organization, and he's actually done a couple of different business models. I met Luke at the Tableau conference this year, and he told me he was a data consultant and did not tell me that he was a founder or the person running his company, and did not brag at all. And so we had a lot of interesting conversations. And then finally he revealed to me that he was the founder because we were talking about different business models. He's like, oh yeah, I used to do that and now I do this. And it became revealed. So this will be interesting. If you're looking to get into consulting or you are a consultant, you can ask questions of Luke. I was a consultant, so I can answer some questions. And otherwise, we're just going to chat. And also just feel free to say hello and I'll give you a spotlight. So Luke, do you want to give us a little intro on you other than mine before we get going?
No, that's for sure. And I've always been super weird about any kind of like glamorous titles. So I usually stay under the radar with data consultant and then proceed until somebody asks me about it. But yeah, it's nice to meet everyone. I mean, for a quick just kind of like background of where I've traversed through data, I have a background in computer science. I just happened to get my first job out of college, just happened to be on a data engineering team where I did a lot of SAP BW type work. It was part of like a massive world's largest private company called Cargill. And we had like a data team that was made up of probably close to like 40, 50 people. So like a giant operation. And then throughout my career, I've got into consulting, which it really just like opened. I loved everything about consulting just because you get the opportunity to work on such cool, interesting projects, and you're bouncing around between a lot of different organizations. Ultimately, after a few years of consulting through a bigger brand, my wife and I did a quarter life retirement that we called in 2016, where we traveled the world for a year and sold everything and basically just did like a life reset.
Wow.
And then ultimately, when we came back at the beginning of 2017 is when I founded Data Drive. It's been in existence for over 7 years at this point. I think I've now officially been more of an entrepreneur than a full-time employee, which is kind of a cool milestone.
Yeah.
And yeah, a number of different business models along the way, but happy to jump in and answer questions as we move along.
Yeah, that was like a lot of hellos in the chat. So we can only see that there's 2 people here right now, I think, because 2 people are watching on YouTube, and that's where I get my numbers from. But we just had like a lot of people. So for everyone who said hello, if you have questions, feel free to ask them.
Yeah, this is incredible.
I love your quarter life crisis thing that you mentioned.
Quarter life retirement, not crisis.
Right. I am trying to convince my boyfriend to do something the same. He's been working like 60 to 80 hour weeks for like years now. He opened he manages a climbing gym that opened in August of 2022, and like the first year was just all out. But he kind of does 3 jobs. He's like the head coach, head route setter, and general manager.
Yeah.
Which you're familiar with, taking that kind of ownership of things. And so we like to climb outdoors, but we don't get to do it because we live in the New York City area. And I would love to someday like move to where we can climb. But I'm like, after this job ends, just please, just like, let's just take a break and like go somewhere and just have fun.
Yeah. It's tough to make in that moment. I don't know what caused us to like want to finally make that choice. I just remember that moment, like 6 months before we put our notice in, we bought the one-way ticket to Tokyo. And it was like, from there on out, we just like, it had to happen. And our parents thought we were crazy. I mean, even after quitting your jobs and kind of selling everything, and like the few days before you leave on that flight with just the clothes on your back, you're like, what am I doing? Right. Like, it feels like you're stepping away from the cool corporate America, like working through jobs and like all their career achievements, and like kind of like deviating off that path.
Yeah.
And it honestly took me probably about like 2 months of being on the road before I like stopped getting that like anxiety of like not working on a Monday.
Yes.
But then once I got out of that moment, you're like, the days become so like slow in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And you just got a lot more time to like think about what's important to you. And I think for me, I've always had a little bit of that entrepreneurial itch, doing a bunch of childhood businesses along the way. But I think that's what ultimately gave me that extra push of like, you know what, like, I'm just going to try my hand at being an entrepreneur and see if I can, build something that's a little bit bigger than myself. And I don't know if I would have made that jump if I didn't, I don't know, like create that kind of like midlife shock that needed to happen and get away from everything that was just like the normal routine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. People tell me I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I hear a lot of entrepreneurs stories, and a lot of them had like a lot of childhood businesses, and I just never did. I just was never that person. I've just never thought about like money or anything. Like Luke and I recently had a coffee chat where we just talked about like investing stuff, because like for full transparency, everybody, I had a 401k that I just cashed out because my company, I had like left after 10 months and like stock had invested, and he was like, "You want to just chat about that stuff? Like, I'm not a financial advisor. We could just chat." So that stuff has never been up my alley, but I do like to take ownership over the things that that we do. I saw one question, Garrett, in the chat that I want to ask you a question first that'll set up this question, but we can start with this one because it is where we are in the conversation now. Do you think the gap in your career is going to have a negative impact when you start looking for a job after the gap, be it a family crisis or a break?
Like I hear a lot of like about this question, or like see it on, blog posts and stuff. I don't know if I actually believe in that having a negative impact. If nothing else, so like when I came back, I mean, in my case, I had like a good story that you can kind of wrap around it. And I think at the end of the day, whether it's a good event like traveling the world or a negative event like, having to take care of a family in crisis, I think what it comes down to is just being able to like be upfront and honest about what that story is. I think at the end of the day, your recruiters, the organization that's trying to recruit you, like we're all humans.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you get into an organization, and my stance on it is, if you go to an organization where like that's like frowned upon that you like took care of your family, I'd question like if there's really good values alignment there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think people make a big deal about like, I can't have gaps in my resume. And for me, having interviewed a ton of data analysts, if people have good, reasonable stories about what makes them tick and what they do and why they've done what they've done in their life, I don't know if I really care about how long you've worked between places.
Yeah. Somebody asked me about, they said that it's particularly hard as a mom, if they took a break from working for a couple of years to be a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, well, you took a break from paid work, but you didn't take a break from working.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
It's hard work. Yeah. So the question I wanted to ask you to kind of set it up is, so you started the consulting, but the path from there to here, I'm sure it's long, and you could do a whole 1 hour talk, just you on it. But what did that look like? Was it you questing out on your own? Did you always want to hire people? I know you had more people working for you than you do now. So can you give us that evolution?
Yeah, I think when I first started the first year of Data Drive's existence, it was truly just an experiment to like, could I keep Luke busy? And it wasn't any kind of bigger dream than I just wanted to see what it would feel like to control my time. Could I find clients? Could I find enough financial success to like support my family at the time? So there was no like grand vision to try to build a big agency. I think in the back of my mind, like I had ideas of like life experiences I wanted to have. For me, like a big thing about how I view life is like living a great story. And I view a lot of like pieces of my life as just different chapters of the story that I get the opportunity to write throughout my life. And so for me, like the quarter life retirement was just a chapter I wanted to write. And for like, call it my 30s, being able to build a business and explore different ways is like the way I've thought about just different chapters and different experiences that not everyone has the luxury to be able to test out. After a year of me freelancing, I had really good success, which was a good problem to have. I had 15 different clients that I had worked with, and a lot of them were bigger clients where they had to send laptops for data security purposes. So you can imagine at my home office, I had like 8 different laptops with like 8 different inboxes that I had to like constantly be like flipping in and out and like switching HDMI cords on. And I think like during that journey, I think I realized by the end of my year 1, I could either continue a great life as just a freelancer, and that would have been great. But I knew the type of work was going to probably always be the same, me kind of making the bread as it was.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I like as my next kind of career challenge is I want to like explore what it would look like to try to scale out a team. And that's taken a lot of like different iterations as I figured out like how to scale offerings and scale marketing and scale delivery. But it's been a really fun learning journey. It's like for certainly been stressful, but it's been cool to, figure out what is the right way to hire somebody, build a career path for them, find meaningful work for people. What is the best way to position a consulting firm? And like, these are all challenges that I look back on, and it's like a mix of stress, but it's also a mix of like not many people get the opportunity to like have to think through that on a daily basis. So I feel just incredibly blessed to like have those type of challenges to be able to solve, and it makes for a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I think it's interesting to see other people who have consulting organizations and their like approach to talking about it on social media. Like you talk about it as you go, like how you're doing it. And then I feel like Keith is the owner, founder, whatever of Action Analytics, and they have like he's most active. They have like a Sense Makers podcast where they like go into depth about Tableau stuff. I see Serena over at Moxie Analytics, mainly just kind of like getting on board with the stuff that the Tableau twins are doing and like talking about their offerings. And there's a lot of different ways to talk about it.
Mhm.
The first question that I had seen that I think ties in now, this one, as a solo business owner, what strategies have you found best for balancing finding new clients and executing on the projects you already have?
Great question, Garrett. Yeah, I think the one piece that when people try to jump into just even like freelance consulting or consulting in general, the thing that is often underappreciated is how much time and energy needs to actually be put into finding that next project for you. There's so much work up front to find that initial contract. And oftentimes when people sell it, it's like they want to get that full-time job. So it's like 36, 40 hours of like contracted work that you have to do on a given week. And oftentimes when you follow any kind of like consulting or freelancing podcast, it talks about this feast or famine cycle of if you spend so much time and literally all of your time working on the paid work in front of you, you will reach a point where that contract will end for whatever reason. And you don't want that to fall to zero so that you're like flipping back into business development mode.
Mhm.
And so for me, I always, during my first year, dedicated at least one day a week. And if things got super busy, then at least 4 hours a week. So a half day of just thinking about what is a LinkedIn direct message I can send, what is a email I can send, what is a phone call I could make to try to at least keep some kind of pipeline moving along. Because yeah, I think that's what people really struggle with is just this constant like I'm super busy and then I'm not, super busy and then I'm not. And when often where I see people who are really experienced practitioners and they can do this job left and right so easy for them, where they start to fall out of like wanting to do consulting or freelancing long term is they hit that trough of like I don't have client work and now I need to get back to a steady paycheck.
Mhm.
And that is because you have to build that discipline of trying to find clients all the time. I mean, that's just kind of what you sign up for when you're trying to control your own destiny. It's got pros and cons to it.
Yeah, it seems kind of exhausting to me, honestly. This one's a sidebar, but I don't want to move past it without answering it because I was an occupational therapist, Brandy. I don't know if you know that. You might. I got my master's degree in that. She said, I'm nervous to get into data, nervous she's going to be able to find a job. Is there really enough jobs out there? It's likely that I can make 100K for my first data analytics job. I can't afford a pay cut at this time. So couple of things to unpack there. Yeah, I definitely think you'll be able to find a job. I think there are jobs out there, and I was able to use just my experience as a nanny and my master's degree as an occupational therapist and get into data analytics. And I loved my first job ended up being consulting, and I loved it. However, are you going to make 100K at your first data analytics job? Absolutely not. You can expect to make between 55 to 80,000 for your first data analytics job. And then your second job or your promotion or something, in your second year, basically, you might get up around 80, 85. But most people don't break six figures until at least year 3 or so. It's a high ceiling. I know a data analyst making 150,000 a year as a senior data analyst, so it's a high ceiling, but you're not going to get there immediately. You could maybe give insights on the consulting world, Luke, because I know some people charge like $250 an hour for consulting, but you have to have the basic experience in order to get into that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think oftentimes too, this is like a trap I fell into once I got into even just consulting with a bigger operation too, is you can hear some really high hourly rates for consulting firms, but you have to keep in mind there's an entire consulting operation that people have to be able to afford behind the scenes. And so, pre-COVID, you're talking about super fancy offices, you're talking about healthcare benefits for employees, you're talking about paying for the salespeople and the marketing people that aren't even billing time to be able to afford them to be able to find that new pipeline. So one thing I'll caution about people kind of throwing around like large consulting rates is like you're not really seeing the full story, because too many times I hear consultants being like, "Oh, my firm charges me out at 150 an hour. Like, why am I not making more?" It it can be a fair question to ask. And I'm not saying you can't ask that question, but you also need to realize as a like business operator that there's a lot of fixed cost, hidden costs behind the scenes of like what it takes to manage a company. I think more specific to the question that was asked of like, yeah, I think it would be hard pressed to say that we can guarantee any kind of like 6-figure income right out of the gates, especially if you're transitioning into data analytics. I think a way that you can maybe be creative about it is like, what are ways that you can leverage your educational background or your professional experiences beforehand to maybe like couple that up with a data analytics job, so
Yeah.
that maybe it's not as much of like starting over in data analytics, but like you're augmenting it with data analytics. And that might give you actually a fighting chance to stay at a more specialized role that could get you closer to the 6 figures you're looking for. But yeah, I think it's hard expectations, especially right now in this economy, to like expect that you can get a 6-figure data analyst job right out of the gates. I think 2-3 years ago it could have been possible, but it's a very different story now.
Yeah, I think a lot of influencers just kind of give us the misdirected idea, and probably the Google certificates course marketing. It's pretty bad, like pretty wrong. I actually enjoyed the course, but I think the marketing is all wrong. Similarly, this person is interviewing for a healthcare data analyst position at a consulting organization. They want to know what they can expect working as a data consultant compared to a data analyst within a company. And actually, that's my career path, my career journey. So I started as a consultant, and I was consulting for like 11 months on behalf of a company, a small consulting company. And then I now work for GitLab, which is about a 2,000 person publicly traded company with like very clear structure and hierarchy. And it's all remote though. Both jobs were all remote. GitLab is like intentionally all remote, asynchronous, global, really good culture. So for me, I also did have good culture at both of my places that I worked, which is like a caveat, because some consulting places you work a lot with no boundaries, and some full-time organizations you work a lot with no boundaries. So it can be both. But for me, I found that in consulting, I felt like I learned a lot. I had clients with small buckets. So I know some people who will consult with like the same client for a year or more than a year. And it's just one person, which feels almost like full-time to me, honestly. I haven't done that though, but I had clients that would buy in 40 to 80 hour buckets of hours, and I would deliver on that. And so in my like 11 months, I think I had like 15, 16 clients or something. So I learned a lot because I saw a lot of different people. Some people use Salesforce, some people use this, some people use that. And it gave me a lot of opportunities to be on camera, presenting work, working on using empathy to understand where the end user was coming from. But what I did find is that there was very little to no data strategy involved in that, because someone comes to you and says, hey, can you build me a dashboard? And this is exactly what I want. And you have 80 hours to do it in. You can't be like, well, I don't think that this is what you actually need. Here's what I think you need instead. So I was towards the end of it actually starting to look for a new role, because I wanted to find something where I could more heavily do like data strategy, because I think I felt bad delivering things to clients that I figured they'd probably only use for a couple months, and then it wouldn't be really useful for them anymore anyways. And then I'm full-time at GitLab, but it has felt a little bit like consulting, honestly, because I am on the central data team. So like, it's like there's a central data team, and then there's functional teams like marketing and sales and finance. And centrally is kind of like the cross-functional, everybody kind of goes through us. And I have been working on these very cross-functional projects, and I'm like kind of like the person on the team who knows how to use Tableau. And so I'm kind of setting like, this is how I think we should do date handling, and here's how I think we should do this, and kind of these best practices and the way that we're doing things, and making templates and writing in our public Tableau developers guide and things like that. So it almost kind of feels like consulting in that way, but I find that it's a much deeper ownership. So as a consultant, I'd be like, it's your job to validate these numbers, because it's not really good use of my time for me to validate these numbers and things like that. Whereas at my job now, I feel like I'm taking on these data products as my responsibility. And so like, if there's a number that seems not right, or for example, today I was migrating a link, and the link was broken. And instead of just like deleting it and being like broken link, I'm like, I'm going to reach out to the person in this team who I think might be responsible and ask them if they want me to update it or if I should just delete it. So it feels like a much higher level of responsibility. However, Luke, you can talk a little bit about this, because you do, I'd say, higher responsibility data consulting than I was doing. So do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think you touched on a lot too, like your experiences within consulting and even within industry. Your mileage will vary. I think you touched on briefly there, like your industry experience of like being on a centralized BI team is kind of like consulting for a broader organization versus decentralized BI, where you're like working directly within a team. But just to speak on the consulting front a little bit too, is like every flavor of consulting is also going to be different. One question I always asked when I was like interviewing to become a consultant was asking about like what percentage of the work is more staff augmentation versus like project-based consulting. I don't know if this is just like Luke's dichotomy. I don't know if it's official, but like I kind of view it as this kind of spectrum of, I think consultants are going to always operate in between. There are many reasons why you want to, like, as a business operator, you might want to get into staff augmentation, because you can get some of these like 6-12 month contracts where you as a consultant will be effectively going in to work as an employee of a bigger company, but like working with them as a contractor. There are pros and cons to that. You get a lot more of a general feel as a consultant, feeling like you're kind of part of a bigger company. You get to work on more strategic projects. You're there for a longer period of time. The downside is you're basically like an employee of that company during that time. So pros and cons.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that is like more project-based consulting is that you come in and you might have a lot more shorter timelines or fixed deliverables that you're trying to go after. And for me, when I think about like what I love about consulting is the ability to like deal with a variety of problems, dig deep on some of these like unique industry issues, and be able to come in and be a problem solver and like figure that out. For the longest time, I've run as a consulting firm as kind of a pretty healthy mix of staff aug and just kind of traditional project-based consulting. But I think what Andy was alluding to was what our core offering as a consulting firm is a little bit unique in the industry. We run something called managed analytic services. And what that means is for small, mid-sized companies that want to have data capabilities, but don't necessarily have an internal data team to go build out these integrations, build out reports, drive data strategy, we actually come in as a fully fledged data team and build out that integration, build out the reporting platform, and help guide the data strategy of like what's going to be important for them. And so our companies can use us for a mix of internal analysis, but also many of the companies will actually use us to like monetize a data product externally, which is kind of a fun spot to be. What I love about that is I get an opportunity to consult across many different organizations and help drive strategy at a much deeper level than normal consultants usually get to go. But we also get to build longer term partnerships to go after some like really deep data problems, more than what sometimes general consulting generally gets into.
Yeah. To tag onto that, Dustin had asked this question. I think it ties in nicely because I know that data strategy I've seen is one of your offerings, especially with the rise of AI, which, by the way, while I mentioned AI, I think that you should learn how to integrate AI with your data analyst career. I don't think that AI is going to be taking our jobs anytime soon, especially as a consultant, because clients never know what they want truly. But back to this question. It says, by the way, do you think organizations need more help today than say 2-3 years ago before this big AI boom in building and executing on a sound data strategy?
Yeah, yes, I think it's a lot more popular for people to be thinking about building a sound data strategy because AI has hit the main media stream now. Everyone wants an AI strategy, and for AI to be successful, it has to be driven by a sound data strategy behind the scenes. Like your data actually has to be in a good governed spot so that it's not just blatantly confidently lying to you because your data is not in a good spot.
Yeah.
And so like, yes, people are more thinking about what a good data strategy should be because they need to get that to get some of the shiny object AI solutions that they're being sold right now. I would argue that it's like there's no more need than a data strategy than there was before. I think it's just a lot more popular for people to talk about getting a data strategy in place. I think there's so many companies that can benefit from a sound data strategy. They just never have had that push to say like we need one, and AI has been a really good reason to get one in place.
Yeah, I agree. But if you don't get there, then later, eventually, most companies, if they grow, realize they need a data strategy. It's just that do they have it? Do they have it now, or do they have it later when it's harder?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think a tough part too is like everyone has data, and it's tough to prioritize data as it's not really a core capability, but it can augment so many of the core capabilities the company's focused on. And so like it's just hard to build out a data team when you're a small company because there's so many different skill sets that people don't even know what to call them, right? Like outside of people on this call right now, like people really don't know what the difference between an analyst or a scientist or an engineer or whatever is. They just think they need a data person. And we know that like hiring one data person isn't going to magically solve all of these deeper problems. And so it's just an education problem.
Yeah, I see a lot of really bad job descriptions. My friend recently wanted to apply to a position. She wants to become a data analyst. She currently is a recruiter, like an admissions coordinator at a school. And she showed me the data analyst position that her school had opened up. And I was like, this is so exciting. And then I looked at it and I was like, oh my gosh, they're looking for a data analyst, a data engineer, and a data scientist. And they want to pay him $60K a year, which is an entry-level data analyst salary. But they'll find that the hard way. Tying in nicely to that, there's two questions that were similar. So we'll start with this one. There's just this universe of data tools, and you're fairly tool agnostic because like you don't have a tool. The last company that I worked for, they had an ETL tool. So like I certainly wasn't recommending ETL tools other than our ETL tool. And we were like partnered with Tableau. So pretty much like it was like, you're going to work with Tableau, you're going to work with our ETL tool, sorted. But you don't have that. So how do you go about recommending the different BI tools basing on their use case and their pricing? And because they could be different, but BI is BI,
Yep. Yeah, I mean, my answer is definitely like evolved as I've like figured out our core offering too. I think now the conversations I have with business leaders running managed analytics services is what kind of business outcomes they're trying to get. And many times these customers actually like don't care about the BI tools behind the scenes. They just want to know like, what is the investment it takes for me to get this type of capability? And I love those conversations more because frankly, there comes a point where I don't think people have to like really care about what tools are used behind the scenes. They just need to be confident that you as an employee or you as a data consultant that's going to be managing their platform is making the best decisions based off your knowledge of like what's out there. So I tend not to get in kind of like too many of these like tool discussion wars. I meet people where they're at with what they have or what they've heard from the industry and like just tell them what other options are out there. I think the trickiest part for like any data consulting services, like just figuring out like how much is that use case going to cost, because so much of that is like super in depth of like number of rows and cadence of refresh, like so many questions that a business user like should have no idea like how to answer that. And so to get through that, we've had to do a number of like strategy engagements or little like assessments to like even kind of figure out, can we show you value early? But then that also allows us to like start gauging some of these more intricate requirements that nobody's going to know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just a consulting problem, it's a tool vendor problem too, is like they charge off really weird things and nobody knows like how much storage is actually going to cost until you just throw it in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that Tableau right now is really pushing everyone to the cloud. They don't want people on server. And so they make the cloud look really good. But then, oh, by the way, your extracts, you're going to have a lot less space for extracts if you go to the cloud than you would on server. Mm-hmm. Just surprise. So the other one similarly is this: what are the most important skills needed to make an impact as an analyst today? I saw several people ask about what skills they need to learn to become a data analyst. And I like this question better because I think that there's this again, like constellation of possible tools and skills that you could learn, but especially because you see multiple different, companies. What do you think for making an impact?
Yeah.
Your focus is.
Yeah, I mean, I do quite a bit of hiring in the space of like data analysts and data developers, and like I think there's definitely kind of this like core skill sets that I don't want people to like skip over, right? Like understanding the fundamentals of like SQL, why it exists, data modeling to some extent, having one tool, viz tool, whether Excel, Tableau, Power BI, I don't really care, just like some kind of like tactical tool experience. But more importantly, what's going to put over the edge of like what is important for an analyst is like all of the soft skills. And I know like people talk about this all the time, but it's like your ability to communicate complex topics, especially around data, to not average people, just like business users that don't have to think about data stuff all the time. Your ability to like hear unique requirements from people and be able to translate that back to like, what do I have to do with the data side? And then be able to take the final product that you're giving out to people and being able to like describe and train and help drive adoption there. More times than not, like the people that I'm trying to hire, the people I'm trying to help my companies hire, because I interview on behalf of other companies too, is I want somebody that can articulate the value of what the solution we're buying or the solution that they're building. Because if you can't say why it's built, who's building it, you're going to just end up with a mess of various data assets that are going to be underused. And most companies, I think, are like hiring super technical people and they just feel stuck
Yeah.
because they don't have an advocate. And I think a really good data analyst, if you're looking to make six figures at a really, really great data analyst, you're excelling when it comes to being able to articulate complex ideas to people who don't work in data.
Yes, that is, I have experienced a good career so far, and I am moving fairly quickly, and it's because of the soft skills. It's because everything else, like the technical skills, I have the technical skills. I can learn them. I think I can learn them pretty quickly, actually, which is great. But being able to build relationships with stakeholders and be able to be that liaison and think critically from their shoes and then also talk to them about what they need is continuing and will probably continue to accelerate my career. So I saw an interesting thing recently. Ethan Aaron, who posts a lot of really interesting stuff on his LinkedIn. You imagine you know him, right?
Yeah, I know Ethan.
Yeah, he had said that when people come to you as a data team, especially a small data team, if some people come to request like a dashboard, then you should say like, okay, here are the 10 dashboards I have in production. Which one of these should I deprioritize and stop maintaining an archive because you actually want this one instead? So it then forces people to really prioritize and you don't get this like sprawl. I can't imagine implementing that in my organization because I'm not one of the decision makers on that, but I thought it was a really interesting point.
Yeah, it actually sparked some good discussion. I was like one of the first ones to like comment on that post this morning too, because yeah, I see where he's coming from with that because I think so many data teams over time, they'll especially like individual people, these data heroes at this company where you're a data team of one, you keep building up so many data assets that your job becomes like half maintaining what you've built and then the company expecting more and more from you. I think the interesting challenge that I like commented on Ethan's post and definitely encourage you to check out his stuff he puts out there. It's pretty cool. Is I think oftentimes like if you want to actually grow your data capability, that might mean having to hire more to the data team. But I also think data teams are unique in that it's kind of like a symphony of like you have to have the right data skills involved, and there's quite a bit of like interpersonal communication that has to happen on that data team. That adding one or two additional data people doesn't magically mean that like a salesperson they're going to make more cold calls or that a success manager they're going to be able to answer more tickets. It's like if you throw two more people in there, it actually becomes a lot more complicated because you have to figure out how does this fit into the broader data strategy, data operation, and we figure it out. And so like I don't actually have a good answer for like his number of assets because like while I think it's aspirational, I don't think you could get away with that in most companies, right? Like no executive is going to handle like I only get 10 dashboards. Like what?
Yeah.
And so I see where Ethan's coming from, and I don't know if there's an easy fix for that. But I think data teams have this interesting challenge that like a 1+1 doesn't magically equal 2 when it comes to a data capability.
Yeah. I think that's a really insightful answer. As a little bit of a pivot here with this question, do you have any programs you can recommend, free or ones you pay for? Imagine for learning data analytics. This was the girl that asked who was an OT.
Yeah.
OT. There are some I came across, but don't want to spend money if it won't be helpful in the end. So I just wrote a book about how to become a data analyst, and I'm not plugging it here, but I did talk about this in my book. I had a whole section on how to pick a good course, and I'll just tell you my advice here. My advice was that learning the data skills, like as we talked about, the soft skills and everything are so important that the data tools and skills themselves, I personally just don't think that they're that hard to learn. Not to minimize it, but you can learn the fundamentals of SQL anywhere. You can learn the fundamentals of Tableau anywhere. You can Power BI, Excel, you can learn those fundamentals anywhere. And so whether it's you're doing Alex the Analyst on YouTube for free, or you're doing, I really like Maven Analytics. I think they have some really great course offerings, and they have a Thinking Like an Analyst course that I've recommended to a bunch of people lately, and 5 different people have made posts about it, about how they really liked it, have taken it. James actually is here in the chat. He's one of the people who did take it and post about it. So I like Maven Analytics. There's like Data Camp, there's Coursera, there's boot camps. I think if you're the type of person that has a hard time self-motivating yourself to learn and needs someone to kind of keep your structure for you, maybe pay a couple $1,000s for a boot camp if you need to pay for that structure, or if you're really not understanding things on your own. But if you are like me and you'd rather take the DIY approach, I spent $45 on the Google certificate course because I hadn't discovered Maven yet. Went and built a portfolio, realized I needed more Tableau, spent $45 on a Maven subscription, and then got my job. So less than $100. And that's what I would recommend to people. And I would recommend even just starting with Alex the Analyst for free and just like building up from there. But if you want it all to be self-managed, like the boot camps kind of do the end-to-end. Also, as a plug for my book, there's a lot of gray space in between taking a course and getting a job. And that's what I wrote the book about. And so hopefully it can cut out all of that weird gray space and you understand where to find free data, what's a portfolio, how do I build a portfolio, where do I host one, what are the stages of tech interviews, all that stuff I put in the book. So do you have anything you want to add to that point of resources and stuff, learning?
I think it's a fantastic answer. I've been out of that space for so long, I wouldn't even know what to recommend, but I do know I would buy Annie's book at my favorite book store.
Thank you. This question's for you, and I actually haven't read it yet because it was long. And I'm not wearing my glasses, but this is for you. So what was the process like transitioning from being a primary person doing the work to being the person managing the work? There's some projects I'm looking at where it might make more sense to bring in a subcontractor, but I'm cautious about growing overhead.
Yeah, great question. I mean, it is a super tricky balance, and bringing on that first person in data operations, like it will, if you haven't been looking at your numbers about like how much it actually cost you as a founder to be selling all the time and delivering all the time, like people when they first build their P&L statements for their freelance business, they like completely disregard your salary, like the person who's running the company. So like first of all, you need to figure out those metrics. Like don't set your salary to zero because you'll set yourself up for failure trying to hire that first person. Throughout the years, I've kind of learned, like, I think it is probably best to start out with a subcontractor for two reasons. One, it's not nearly as much of a financial commitment to like take somebody from another job and like put them under your company. That's a big commitment both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think second of all, I think it gives you an opportunity as a business operator to figure out how you work with other people. Because like you might be incredibly crafted in the art of selling and the art of delivering, but like managing people and just managing projects can be a totally different skill set to flex. And I think subcontractors are a really great way to like test out that motion, even try before you buy in terms of if you want to eventually bring that subcontractor into the fold. I think it's a good, safe option for figuring that out while you figure out the P&L of, can I bring on a full-time person? How can I guarantee that that pipeline is going to be there? Because yeah, you take a lot of responsibility as an employer, making sure that you've got a business that can sustain people's lives. And I take that responsibility very seriously. And I think you should too.
Yeah. As a plus one to that, my last company, when they had hired me, I was new to the field and essentially they were like, hey, we're going to build a team of people who are new to the industry and we're going to train them to be Tableau consultants. And so it was me, one other person that was new and one person that had been contracting with the company who they brought on full time. And so I was hired at a fixed salary, full-time, benefits, health insurance, all that. And I really liked it. I learned a lot, but things changed. Like they were a Tableau partner and Tableau stopped sending them work. And so my team didn't have as much work to do and we had to get flexible in the things that we were doing. And that was all fine. But then the company was not doing super great. And then in February of last year, while I was out of office, I was like in New Zealand for 6 weeks, having a great time. But there was 1 week that I took off in Tasmania with one of my closest friends. We were like driving around in her van, sleeping like, she's like a van built out, sleeping on the beach and everything. I get a notification. My boss messages me and he's my friend. And he was like, hey, I'm really sorry, but like this thing's happening and you're going to want to know about it. And so I couldn't make the live meeting because it was too early. It was like 2 a.m. my time. But then I watched it back afterwards and essentially his boss had announced that they would be changing our salary, but she packaged it up like it was a good thing. It moved from fixed to variable. So now it was based on the number of hours that we were delivering. And it was like, it was a good thing because then if you deliver more hours, you get paid more. And so it was like kind of framed that way. Also like the legality of different states, like if someone's going to take a pay cut, you have to notify them like legally, like get them agree to it or something. But if you call it like, if you package it that way, then legally you don't have to do that. But at the time, I only was being given like 20-ish hours a week from my pipeline. And I was supposed to be hitting at least 35 in order to, the new benchmark was 35, which also, just as an aside for anyone here, is really tricky to hit 35 hours a week if you have like 5 different clients in a week because of all the task switching. So I was actually realistically needing to work 45 plus hours a week to hit that 35 benchmark to continue making my salary. So she had essentially told me while I was out of office that effective as of the next Wednesday, I was getting a pay cut by like a significant amount. And it was really tough on me. And then my coworker, he's like trying to have a baby and like has like a house and everything. And so it's really tough on him. And that was when I was like, okay, time for me to go. So as a +1 on that, it is a big responsibility taking people on. If you take someone on as a fixed salary and you're committing to that, I personally think it's a really shady thing to do to then be like, never mind. Whereas if it's a subcontractor, there's never an expectation that you're going to be, paying them full time for. This is a good question that I think ties in nicely with that. What would you say is your most important lesson you learned as a founder, and like the most surprising thing you didn't expect?
Oh boy, just one thing. Boy, I mean, I'll go like a little bit deeper maybe than what you're looking for, but I think the one thing I've learned about just trying to be a founder in entrepreneurial ventures, it's a lot more of a mind game than I think people realize. Sure, there's a lot of just like the tactical operations of setting up the business, but I think when you sign up to be an entrepreneur, especially when you start building out a team and just there's a lot of like responsibilities, and there's a lot of like you don't get the luxury of being able to shut off your job at the end of the day as much as you try. And so I think the things that like I just didn't expect is like how many different facets go into a successful business, and you have to be excited about that. It's not just about like I want to make lots of money. It's like it is a full-time responsibility, and your brain truly never shuts off. And yeah, I think the toughest part about just trying to grow and scale a company is just trying to figure out how to delegate operations. And because when you start, you are owning everything, and you wrongly assume that you're the best at everything that your company can possibly do. And opening up space and the luxury for people to be able to come in and have ownership and do what they do best and help grow the company together is, I think, can be a struggle for any entrepreneur, because it's your baby, quote unquote, and you want to make sure that you're doing right by it and your brand and your clients. So yeah, I think just like the constant stages of delegating out certain things that you believe you're the master of has been probably like the trickiest challenge, and it continues to be. You think you're so great at something until you find somebody that does it 10 times better than you, and you're like, why was I doing that?
Yeah, I hear that. I've been asking recently different founders about, starting a business, owning a business. And I hear a lot of those things. And it's similar to the kind of the sentiment of like why I wrote my book, because it's like, if I could just go back in time and then just give that to myself at the beginning, it would have just saved me so much time and energy and effort. And I think, that hindsight is 2020 saying, which I wonder if we're ever going to stop using that, because 2020 was such a tough year for everyone.
Yeah.
This was a question that was asked a while ago, but we had said, somebody had asked if about AI, if like AI is going to replace data jobs, or if analysts just need to learn to use AI. And this is a really good follow-up question, because I had said just learn to use AI, and then follow-up question, what are you actually using AI to do? So are you using AI in your stuff?
I am. I actually am using it probably more on a lot of like the business operations side. I think when like that Chat GPT craze came out, whatever, a year plus ago,
Yeah.
I went really deep on, all right, like now I feel like I've got somebody, because one thing I don't feel like I have a great strength in is like being able to like sit down and write from a blank page. And so I for like one of my best use cases for AI is like for all things marketing. We can talk about like SEO type work. And I'm not promoting like going on LinkedIn and having ChatGPT write your post. I can see right through that every time. I'm not promoting spam posting a ton of blog articles that ChatGPT wrote. Like there has to be a little bit of human creativity added to that, and a little bit of knowledge, actually, more than just like fluffy words. As a guy like who's recruiting right now, like people fill out their questions on my applications, and it's like they're super excited about this role, and it's like 2 paragraphs, and I'm like, I don't even know if you said anything of use in there.
Yeah.
So thank you, ChatGPT. But all that to say is like I think I'm a huge fan of what AI can provide, especially when it comes to me on the marketing front, because I think it provides me a kind of like a organization method, or like a kind of fellow writer that can at least get the process of creativity started for me when I'm looking at a blank page. And I think I've personally found that I'm better if I've got something I can review and like poke holes at, versus trying to like come up something from scratch. And so I love that these tools can kind of give me a really crummy a version of something I could say, and then find out a better Luke way of saying that in more of my tone and structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I think there's going to be some like interesting data AI tools. I'm sure that's where that question is probably more coming from, but I still think we're like pretty early on about like what these like vendors AI capabilities are actually going to look like. Everyone got busy advertising, and now we're like in beta of many of them. I think the jury's still out about like what is their usefulness when it actually comes down to like put a fully fledged production product out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just as a plus one on that, your SEO stuff is really good. If anyone wants to Google Tableau conference, do you know what are you the third result? If you Google Tableau conference, are you like the
So
third
yeah,
result comes up?
so it's funny you picked that one because Tableau conference is like by far my like most visited page right now. Probably because like maybe Tableau could like announce pricing and like registration, but
Yeah.
like there's tons of people searching for that right now.
Yeah.
For a brief moment, I was actually like number one for Tableau conference, like even
Yeah.
above Salesforce and Tableau. It was amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's like you can use tools to basically figure out what is the internet searching for. And so I could tell that Tableau conference was becoming a breakout phase in the summer of 2023.
Yeah.
So I wrote a really simple blog post that's out there, and people are landing on it. What I love about it is that it drives people to my website, got a chance to view other articles that I have out there.
Mm-hmm.
But then also you kind of fall into the like you visited Data Drive before, so like maybe you could be retargeted in the future.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just like I've had a lot of fun with the SEO. I mean, I'm like such a amateur SEO person, but I feel like I'm so confident because I like it's such a numbers game and just like looking at stats and trends and trying to like just beat the algorithm. But you kind of live and die by the Google algorithm, right? I used to have a really high spot on Tableau. I've since lost that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking to regain it back. It's kind of a fun game I get to play.
Yeah. I actually was thinking about for the Tableau conference, submitting a session about like building your personal brand, which really like on socials, which I think could be kind of applied to obviously, I think so. The overall context of this is that people want to buy from people now and not companies. And so I think that the rise of people using their social medias to elevate their career and potentially their businesses is going to come. And people who can create and can do a good job of it, not only will elevate, I mean, I've seen it tremendously. I have 70,000 followers on TikTok, 75,000 followers on LinkedIn. I got my first and my second job from it. I'm making above average for the amount of time that I've been in the field. I have a great job where I have really good learning opportunities. GitLab is a well-respected company, and it's because of the brand that I have. So like building your brand to elevate your career, but then also I think I see a lot of consulting organizations that I'm like, you could be leveraging your people. Like you make these, I just see these terrible posts where they're like, do you have a data lake? We can help you with your data lake. I'm like, who are you catching with that? If somebody knows what a data lake is, they're not going to need you. And if they don't know, they're not going to catch that. And so instead they could be like leveraging their people, and their people could have personal brands. So I was thinking about asking you if you wanted to talk with me, because you could tag in on the SEO stuff. Because I think that that's part of it. And
Yeah.
you say you're a newbie, but your SEO is clearly doing really well for you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
It's just an idea that I have. But
Yeah.
with AI question, I do use a little bit of it for my job. I just started writing SQL. So my first job was a Tableau consultant. So I just did Tableau a lot. And then kind of towards the end of that job, I started using SQL. But now my job at GitLab, I'm still doing a lot of Tableau, but I have to read a lot of SQL, which I can do. But sometimes I'm creating SQL to do like validations and stuff. And can I write SQL? Yes. But does it go much faster if I just tell ChatGPT what SQL I want to write and have it do that, handle the syntax and stuff? Yes. There are times when I have to. I find that if I do like CTEs where I have like a lot of dimensions that I need to join on, it'll only bring through like 2 dimensions. And so I still am definitely the overseer of it, but that is mainly how I use it. And then I use it for a lot of, like you said, kind of administrative stuff. Like when I was job searching, like almost all of my emails, I did a first pass with ChatGPT, not a last pass, but a first pass. And, little administrative things like that I use to just make my job go a lot faster. And if I ever need to like write a Python script, sometimes I'll like write Python scripts to do fun little things for me, like getting data or whatever. ChatGPT does a really good job with that. So that's what I use AI for.
Yep.
Here is another question. How do you approach convincing a client about how to go about a project? Because most clients don't really know what they need, which tags in with the AI. This is why AI won't replace this, because most clients don't really know what they need. I like a client who doesn't have any data storage in place, and most of the data collection and transformation are manual, which affects the data integrity, but the client wants you to build out dashboards anyways.
I love this question. Yeah. I mean, this is such like the big problem of the difference between what we as data professionals know they need versus just like the marketing aspect of data consulting services. because yes, it is a massive uphill battle to sell people on, you need a cloud data warehouse, you need data governance, right? Like they need to feel the pain in some way. And so I'm a huge proponent of, like, of course, every first project is going to have some kind of like dashboard component to it, because I want to get them get in front of them a product that they can touch, feel, take to the executives with, filled with a bunch of filters that are filled with a bunch of crap data in it. It's got null as the first line item on every single filter. I call it kind of the data reveal meeting, where it's like, we've built what you've asked for. It looks beautiful. We've put a lot of like lipstick around it, but the fact that is like, we can't actually get good stats around year over year performance, or like be able to filter by product line because of all these data integrity issues, or the fact that your team now is going to have to sign up for downloading CSVs from your 2 systems and put it on to Google Drive every Monday. Like, you have to make a real decision on, like, is that a good use of your team's time? Because like it can, that time adds up. But I found that, like, until you get to a point where that client can actually measure that, they're not going to really make that decision to like move to a data warehouse. And so for a lot of like the pitch that we do for companies is, we can absolutely get started on showing you a dashboard, because I think for many people, they don't know what they don't know. And part of that transition is like, let's just get out of your Excel spreadsheet and move to like a modern data tool.
Mm-hmm.
The next step after that is like, there's a world where you don't actually have to download CSVs on Sunday night. And it just blows people's minds, but it is a crawl, walk, run methodology.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to just kind of like build your services, if you're interested in selling it, around that growth curve.
Yeah.
Because once they're on the other side of that, then you've opened up the whole beautiful things that we talk about as a data industry. But before that, I mean, we've got a huge education problem in the broader industry. You got to show them what's even possible before we start talking about all the cool things that AI is going to bring to this world.
Yeah. I think to tag on to that one, can you tell me more about how you would talk to a smaller company about data strategy? And this conversation that you were just talking about is typically one that you have with a smaller company, and, you know, their strategy of how their data works and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, big, small, I think the biggest thing is like, people just need to know what they're going to get. What's in it for me? I mean, that's like marketing 101. And so take advantage of the fact that we've got beautiful looking dashboards and tools that we can get data in front of people at a fairly quick clip. Help them see what life could be like when they have an ability to make actionable insights really quick. Throw a map at them. They love clicking on those things. Mm-hmm. And then you open up the possibilities of like, what else could we be doing with our data? Why can't we do this with our data today? How can I save my team's time working on this? I mean, you start to like rip off the Band-Aid of all the stuff behind the scenes, but it often has to start out with what's in it for me. And oftentimes for what the work I sell is executive dashboards get people excited. It gets people listening. It gets budget in place. It starts the momentum.
Yeah. Yeah. All of my dashboards, almost all of them, always start with an executive summary and then go further into it.
Totally.
So this is, how do you recommend articulating that relationship ability, which is, we're talking about the soft skills when marketing yourself, whether it's LinkedIn, Fiverr, or resume job applications. So as somebody who's reviewing applications, you could only fit so much in a resume, right? So what is it that you're looking for? What signals to you either in the resume or the actual application process that this person has more than just the technical skills?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that we use on our side is we have very specific 3 to 4 questions we ask on our application process, and they're very specific to the job that people are applying for. But the first one's always pretty much the same, which is like, why are you excited about this role at Data Drive? Mm-hmm. And yes, it's an opportunity for you to like go into ChatGPT and like paste it in and like just kind of like check the boxes. But honestly, the people I'm interviewing are the people that like legitimately take time to answer that. And mm-hmm. and it's like, seriously, if you just spend the time to answer the question, you've now made it in the top 10% of applicants. No joke. Yeah. And I'm not even asking for an essay response. Like, there are times where I read 2 sentences from somebody, and I was like, that is actually well thought out. Mm-hmm. I will talk to that person. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about, if you're putting out content to the world, if you're posting on LinkedIn, if you're filling out a Fiverr profile, if you're going for a job application, I think more than anything in this like post-COVID world filled with AI, people are yearning for human connection. And so they want to know that there's like a human writing the darn thing behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And so like the stakes are pretty low right now. It's like, you just have to write who you are as a person. And me as an employer, I see it. I think everyone in the community at this point can kind of figure out, if you're writing with AI, just mm-hmm. be human, mm-hmm. and great things will happen. It's not that hard.
Something in like LinkedIn connection requests. A good question for kind of this, I think that this ties into this having like kind of an entrepreneurial spirit. How can I effectively acquire practical experience and implement my theoretical knowledge to excel as a data analyst? I'm imagining you're meaning like excel as in get ahead, not just excel the tool. So I think that a lot of this comes down to having kind of that spark of being able to go out and, I think, first start with like Maven Analytics free data sets. Just practice, understand that you know how to use the sum function, you know how to build a bar chart, whatever it is. But then after that, go and find data projects that you can do. I have a ring and a watch, and they both have data. I actually would, one of my friends, I'm asking if she wants to do a data project on my ring data because it tracks everything. And I started adding tags because I think that and it's not telling me about the tags. So it's not telling me that like on like day 7 of my cycle, I tend to always tag strong. And so that day is the day that I should get on my projects at the gym because that's when I'm feeling strong. And I'm like, why isn't it telling me that? Because it's otherwise a good app. So there's data everywhere. And so, yeah, you want to tag in on your thought on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is like just getting your foot in the door starts with showing up with excelling from like a soft skills perspective. It's hard to get that first job to like break into data analytics, but the more you can kind of stand out as you as a unique human that actually shows up and just like gets the promises that they're putting out to the world that they're going to get it done and they're a reliable worker. Again, that's going to put you in the upper echelon of people that I've seen throughout my data career. If you like actually care about what you're doing in this world, that's going to unlock opportunities for you to get more applied experience. Because yeah, it's not the most experienced person that's like getting the job. It's the ones that are showing up and acting like they care.
Yeah.
And do care, not acting like they care.
Yeah, that transition well into this one. As far as learning to transition into data, is there an advantage to learning a cloud service? There's just so many things you see on, everyone, like there's so many tech stacks you see on all of the different applications. And I personally just can't pick out, besides the fundamentals of Excel, SQL, and Tableau or Power BI. I can't pick out, well, you should learn this cloud service or whatever. I think it ties back to being excited and wanting to be there and your kind of background. Like you said before, if you're coming out of healthcare, maybe a healthcare position could like get you in the door. But you see a lot more clients than I do. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same mind. Like, I think too often people, when they're thinking about breaking in data analytics, are like, what is the 5 tools that I need to learn that are like going to guarantee that I get a job? Like, doesn't really matter. If you want to pick one that will help you get a leg up when that company happens to use that technology, fantastic. Can I sit here and say like, these are the 5 tools that'll give you 80% success chance? Probably not. I mean, for me, I look at it as like, I came out with a computer science degree. I was doing data engineering. I downloaded this little tool called Tableau Desktop in like 2012, and from there it just like became a thing that I was like, this is super cool. Like it feels like an extension of how I like to play with data. And so for me, I just like, I didn't sit down and said like I need to learn Tableau. I was just like, this is fun. I can do this, and people will pay me to like have fun working with this. And that's really like what's led on this trajectory. Is like I'm not going to be this huge like Tableau fanboy. It's just like it happens to unlock a whole plethora of opportunities for me to be able to like do what I want to do, which is being able to work with business leaders and like solve their problems using a tool that is like second nature to me now.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying here you have to learn Tableau. It could be a totally different tool nowadays.
Yeah.
Probably is.
Yeah. So I just looked at the time and I think it says 1:29, right? I'm not wearing my glasses.
I think so.
We started at 12:30, right? I mean, whatever
We did. We are at 59 minutes.
Okay. Oh yeah, I think it says here. Okay. All right. Wow. That was actually like I've never like run up to the end of it on questions before. Like I've usually had like some summary questions that I can ask at the end to get the time. So wow. Thanks everyone for all your questions, and Luke for all your insights.
Yeah. This has been super fun. We'll see you at the Tableau conference stage when we co-present, right?
I think it'd be great. You also, you don't log off when I end the stream. You can stay in here and we can chat. But I think that would be great. So everyone who came, thanks for asking questions. And Luke, thanks for coming on. And we are going to end the stream. But if you have more questions, we both post content regularly. And feel free to ask in our comment sections about the things that we talk about. Okay, bye, everybody. Ending.